Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot. Thank you all for joining us here for ICCO's Roundtable here at LBB Beach. It's 2026 Cannes Lions. Before we start our discussion, I'd like us to go around the table, please, just to do a quick round of introductions. And Massimo, if I could start with you first, please.
We need people to drink.
Thanks, Arun. Welcome, everybody. I'm Massimo Moriconi. I'm the president of ICCO, and I run the business of Omnicom Group in Italy. Vineet.
Hi, a big hello from Cannes, my debut. Thanks, Arun, to have me on this panel, and thanks, Massimo, everybody. Part of ICCO board as a treasurer, and also a student of communications. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Candace, Flippin, representing the Page Society. Really excited to be here, and also my debut at Cannes Lions.
Hello, I'm Julia Omini. I'm representing YouGov here. I'm working in the Strategic Insights Department. So it's about understanding consumer behavior over long time patterns, and I'm happy to be here with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm Arun Sudhaman. I'm the non-executive chair of ICCO. It's my pleasure to host today's discussion. We are going to be talking about the era of relationship capital. We are drawing in particular on ICCO's World PR report, which finds that trust is increasingly embedded in relationships between partners, whether it's clients, whether it's employees, institutions, to an extent, communities, and that capital becomes more valuable in this era of volatility that we are living in, where we are seeing, significant geopolitical tensions. We are seeing disruption from AI. And we're seeing so much societal fragmentation as well. And that's increasing complexity. It's eroding trust in traditional sources of authority, particularly institutions. So a few points I want to make before we start the discussion. Trust is shifting from institutions to networks. Audiences are increasingly relying on trusted relationships with each other rather than with institutions. And of course, algorithms and algorithmic silos are accelerating this fragmentation. That presumably makes authentic engagement more important. We're seeing that in crises and in shocks. Relationships are what holds. Relationship capital determines who collaborates, who's trusted, who recovers. We're seeing innovation is now less about what people own and what they can mobilize, more about the ecosystem, more about the partnerships that they can forge. And of course, we see human qualities emerging as more of a differentiator. Of course, relationships are all about humanity. Well, hopefully, even in this age of machines. But as AI kind of increasingly commoditizes technical capabilities, we're seeing empathy and judgment become more important. They can't be replicated. They can't be automated. And so for talent, for culture, people are choosing perhaps employers based on, meaning and values. Leaders perhaps have to be more credible. So this is the broader backdrop. Also, we know that reputation alone as a kind of intangible asset is valued in some studies in trillions, tens of trillions of dollars, and relationship capital really, I think, sits within that. So let's discuss. And Julia, I wanted to start with you. I wanted to ask you perhaps if you can provide some context from your work at YouGov in terms of the behavioral shifts you're seeing in customer brand relationships and how that kind of reinforces or illustrates this whole idea of relationship capital.
So what we see, especially with regard to the multi-crisis that's been going on for some time, and the latest crisis in the Middle East, that the consumer is getting trained in some way of dealing with these kind of situations. So they are not panicking anymore. They are not reacting so strongly anymore as they did in 2022. So we have a consumer that is more, let's say they feel more empowered, they feel more self-direct and put themselves more in the focus, and that is of course something that does matter for brands, because it is more difficult for brands to convince them to get the trust. It's not trust is really, as you said before, it's the main asset of a brand, and 90% of our consumers say that it is the number one brand characteristic that brands need to have. But it's not something that is granted anymore. It needs to be the consumers evaluate. So you have to gain the trust. Consumers are very attentive to different fairness signals. For example, they are very prone to boycotting brands if they increase their prices in an unfair manner that is perceived as unfair, or for poor customer service, or any other thing that makes them feel like personally touched and treated in an unfair way. And we have the fact that consumers have this empowerment, so they have access to a lot of information, they have access to a lot of alternatives. Also private labels are growing, but different, of course, all the different channels and social media, they have access to more information, to more opinions. So it's far more difficult for brands really to be able to convince them.
Yeah, they can't take the consumer for granted, I think, if they ever did. Massimo, if you don't mind, I'll come to you next. I wonder if you can perhaps explain a little bit about how you see relationship capital, given these shifts that Julia mentioned as well, and how it might actually be measured.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Arun. Well, first of all, relationship capital is the value that an organization creates because of the relationship with its key stakeholders over the years. It takes time. But today, it's absolutely more important than ever because of what you said before. Think of, first of all, the fragmented information society and polluted information society. So this information can hit brands anytime. Having a net of stakeholders is the best way to protect the reputation of the brand, because many allies will stand up saying that's not true. First point. The second point is around the geopolitical tensions. So think of how many contracts could have been terminated because of force majeure, while relationship capital allow business continuity and allow companies to keep running the business. I think another point is around innovation. It's very hard to think that innovation comes only from one company. Normally, it's an ecosystem which involves university, partners, institution, etc. So, relation capital is a way to get access, to move faster. And as we said before, it's not only about resilience, but it's about the chance to grow. And then I think human capital is the core of relationship capital. We can think of the war for talents in quite a few industries, and the chance to have a strong corporate culture is the best way to retain talents and to reduce also the cost related to the replacement of talents because of the turnover. And finally, around AI, which is the fifth point, we are living now in this transformation, right, led by AI. But one day we might see that AI becomes somehow a commodity, so in the hands of quite a few players, and the difference will be made by the human capital using AI, which means judgment, empathy, strategy. And with this in mind, I say that there is not only one way to measure relationship capital, but I tell you, the magic of relationship capital is the fact that it's very measurable. And it starts on defining the clusters of stakeholders you want to prioritize. So let's start with the customers. You can have a different way to measure relationship capital. One is the trust they have for you. The other one is their loyalty. And another way is the Net Promoter Score. So allowing the access of prospects to the world of the brands and the properties. And now let's talk about prospects. Maybe on prospects, reputation works better because the awareness plus the reputation make the beginning of the funnel of prospects. And then you can use the cost per conversion from prospect to clients. Another interesting clients could be employees. Engagement scores, the net promoter scores of employees are great metric to be considered. And communities, you have a set of ESGs, the initiatives you do with the communities, the media sentiments in the local area where your brand operates. So this to say that there are several tools that you can use. And we're talking about something intangible in theory, but then something that you can measure and therefore improve along the way.
Thank you, Massimo. It's fascinating, actually, hearing you talk about some of these measures. Candace, if I can come to you next, you're obviously both a researcher, but you're also someone that has a lot of insight into CCOs at Page. One of the things we see in Page's research is that measurement is sometimes a challenge. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts in terms of how you're seeing perhaps some of these metrics, measuring relationships. Is that something that CCOs are taking more seriously? Do you think they should be?
Thank you, Arun. I was really pleased to hear a lot of the measurements that Massimo discussed, because we know from our member usage that many of those measurement frameworks are actually being used. As it relates to relationship capital, in addition to being a researcher and a Page, I also am a former CCO myself, and so that perspective comes to play and how I want to approach this. As I think about the role of the CCO in the enterprise, he or she plays an incredible leadership role of connecting all the different contributing factors to the reputation of an organization. And to the extent that you want to be intentional, then it's important to have some type of measurement framework in place. And so what we see is, depending on what resources are available in the remit of that CCO, there may be certain metrics that may be more rudimentary to those that are much more sophisticated, to allow them to have predictive analytics to anticipate what a potential stakeholder may want to do or need from the organization. So I'm going to double down on yes and intentionality. And what we're looking to do is understand what our members are doing, and then to provide them with additional insights to help them move further along the continuum.
Well, that's encouraging to hear, but maybe we'll come back to you a little bit later, because I'd like to hear more perhaps about the some of the measurement opportunities and challenges in this area. Vineet, over to you. So this kind of, I think this shift, from institutions to relationships, it does bring disruption, right? To not just to businesses and organizations, but also to consultants and consultancies who are like you, who are building businesses around providing advice and counsel and services in this area. So from your perspective, an entrepreneur, based in Asia Pacific, how are you navigating this kind of disruption?
Thanks, Arun. I feel relationship itself is a disruption. And it has been a disruption not today. Since the time I have been in the industry, almost 26 years. And I'll tell you, the first day when I started my PR job, there are a few journalists I spoke to. That relationship from that day till now are equally strong. They were trainee journalists. I joined as a trainee. They are editors right now. And that gives that access of continuity of that relationship. Now, we always somewhere take relationship in a very different connotation. I feel relationship is an access and information. Not necessarily in our business, relationship is getting your work done. Many a times, just certain information itself is a great boon, right? And I think that's something which is very important. Now, why I say relationship is it's, and today especially when again not talking against the current generation or the new breed of communicators who believe their comfortable Miller chairs are great for them to build relationships and get the work done. Probably in a short term, yes. Long term, they all have. I can see their challenges. We have built our relationships on the basis of in-person meetings. Today, if that happens, that's a disruption. And I think we need that disruption. There are multiple reports when even AI is sort of depending on earned. How do you earn the earned? Is relationship. I mean, there's no other way, right? You can have a strong story once, but you can't have a strong story every time. So to be in the public eye, you need relationship to make sure that you sort of get that access. So I think this is more from a outside point of view. I think Massimo touched about the customer. You spoke about consumer and customer. When I was doing my MBA, one of the most important quotes which we were taught, that one satisfied customer brings 100 more. And believe me, it's so true. After 18 years being in agency, my own agency, believe me, the first 3 clients of Kaizzen are still my clients. Not because we do great work, because we understand, we have maintained that relationship. When they need it, we were there. And you spoke about this continuity. You spoke about the business continuity in the tough times, right? All the geopolitical issues. And COVID was one such time. We worked at least for a dozen clients without charging them for 6 months. And believe me, all of them still remember us. So I think it's a very human thing to be working around it, and it made complete business sense to us. I mean, if you really look at it, it made so much business sense to us. So I think it's all about relationship. I generally, when I go to lectures and talk to, I said, who's your client? And people say, marketing department, comms department. I said, no, it's people, it's person. It's that person who is your client. You need to understand what clicks with him, what he needs. Does he watch? Does he look at his WhatsApp at 7 a.m. in the morning? Is that something what he's really looking at? And if you can give that information, what he's looking at 7 a.m. is where the relationship starts. We are in a servicing industry. And I think that's a big disconnect always I get into, this work-life balance. And it's like complicated, but I feel service industry needs to work around the client centricity, and I think that's something. My final take, relationship for me is the employees. There are at least a dozen employees in Kaizzen who are with us for more than 10 years. We are 18-year-old agency. We are around 250 people. And that is where the relationship plays role. I feel, and these are the motivators. When the next batch, another dozen who are 5-7 years old. And I think that's the messaging. There are years, good years, there are bad years. Doesn't matter what appraisals you are getting, what growth you are getting. It's about how you understand what trust you bring in to people. And I think that's how I would divide relationship from our point of view. As far as AI is concerned, I think there is a lot of confusion right now around AI. How much to use, what to use, where to use. Clients wanted AI, but then you go with AI, they feel, hey, it's AI. So what do you do, right? And if you go with AI, they say, hey, why are you charging so much? It's AI. So it's a very interesting times. And I feel by the time we come out of, or we sail through this next couple of years, there will be a lot of clarity on whether we need to stick with genuine or we need to stick with generative. And I think that's and ultimately the bottom line is relationship was required 26 years back when I started. Relationship is required today. Thank you.
Thanks, Vineet. Quite a lot, actually, to digest from all of your comments. Julia, maybe I'll come back to you because we heard a lot here in terms of just the importance of, I think, being genuinely human, of being able to build relationships that are resilient, last, can be measured. And I wonder from your perspective, looking at brands, how difficult is this for them, given their focus is often on maximizing profit, scaling everything they can do? The temptation then, presumably, is AI becomes a shortcut, and they are prioritizing perhaps things ahead of relationships specifically.
Yes, I agree with you that relationship is really the basement of everything. Also because of what I said in the beginning, that there's a lot of information. The consumer is empowered, but on the other hand, one thought that came up to me when you were talking about AI. On the other hand, they also need guidance because they have their needs, of course. They are directed to what serves them, and maybe we can say the perspective also of loyalty is a bit switching. It's not a client, a customer being loyal to a brand, but maybe it's around being the brand that has to be loyal to the customer and has to really understand him, as you said, understand what they really need and help him also in all the different opportunities they have to find what really serves their needs, because consumers are also, they are trying to balance a lot of different needs in these times. They have to save, they have to budget, but on the other hand side, they want also treats. So they need to find for themselves a justification. Why do I need that? So a brand must help them, also guide them towards fulfilling their needs better or being their better self. And I think that is something, consumers also already tried a bit to be helped by AI in using it to compare products or to find the best price, for example. But I think a relationship with a brand is really something very important. And we see that I'm what you said before, I'm coming back to that the real world relationship is something that counts even more. So what we are also currently seeing is people going, they don't have a very positive outlook to the future, so they are either concentrated on the here and now and making the best of here and now. Only 10% really looks into the future with a positive view. And there's also a growing nostalgia. So people are turning back to the brands maybe they learned, they got to know in their childhood and find some comfort in these retro signals because it reminds them of times when everything was easier. They are turning back to analog hobbies, for example. So they're starting to knit, or there's offline clubs where we can get in real interaction. So I think this is something brands also need to be aware of, that you can do a lot with AI, you can be a lot efficient, but in the end, it's the human relation that gives you this feeling of trust also.
Yeah. It's a great point, especially as you said, when people are worried and thinking about the present. Massimo, what's your advice for brands in this kind of a climate?
Maybe I could stress a couple of points. The first one is that in darkness you can find diamonds. And so tough times are a chance to understand who can be a trusted partner along the way. I like the example you shared, Vineet, thanks about that. And the second one is around relationship has a way to build a corporate culture. And we know that culture is a strategy for breakfast. And it makes a difference. So to anyone running a brand or a consultants agency, I think the key is around developing the relationship with their own people first, because this will create fantastic benefits outside the organization.
Candace, over to you. Oh, sorry. Candace, over to you. Given what you've heard and what you know, and of course your work as a CCO and also the research you've done, what do you think CCOs should be measuring and maybe should be prioritizing in terms of the things that they measure?
To drive home how the industry can create distinctly scalable agencies.
I would argue that CCOs are taking a stakeholder approach to it. And so they are thinking about all the different stakeholders who have a relationship with the organization, with the products or services that are provided. And to the extent that they can understand those particular stakeholders, they are measuring the engagement with the organization. They are measuring the narrative and the messages that they are putting out into the world that's specific to that particular stakeholder through their media relations and their media engagement. They are measuring the engagement with the organization through metrics in terms of their social media. They're measuring the connection with the assets of the organization, their social media channels, their own channels, their websites, which are very important. They're measuring the sentiment of the articles that are out there. We're now seeing more deliberate measurement in terms of how the corporation or organization is being described in these large language models by measuring whether or not they are being characterized appropriately and accurately and using GEO techniques. They're measuring, in some cases in a very sophisticated way, the impact of what they're doing on share price or the outcomes of certain types of legislation.
Yeah.
And so what we know is that of all the different types of measurement, our members and CCOs are actually doing that measurement. The question becomes, in the context of relationship capital, are you prepared and have you built enough of assets in your relationship capital bank that you get the benefit of the doubt in the inevitable case when something goes wrong? And so the work there is really looking at the risks in front of us today. And some of those key risks have to do with geopolitics and how that may impact both those inside and outside of your organization. Other risks include misinformation and disinformation. And do you have the approach and tools to understand first of all what represents misinformation and disinformation, and then how you are able to then understand that and measure that to see if it's an impact on your organization or what the potential impacts may be. At the end of the day, it's just really a matter of taking a stakeholder view of understanding what relationships do you have, what are the activities, behaviors, and strategies you have in place to manage those relationships intentionally. Are you open to the emerging landscape of different types of relationships for their organization? So in a traditional sense, we often thought about media as a traditional relationship. But in our modern society, influencers also play a role in that. And so just broadening that. And as we see these large language models emerge and broader adoption, there's this very interesting conversation that's been brewing is whether or not these large language models are actually stakeholders.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like this Miller Lite debate. On one hand, people are saying yes, they are because they can influence your brand, and so many of us are relying on this type of content. And then there are others who are saying absolutely not, because at the center there needs to be a human, because the human has the judgment, the human has the empathy, the human is a tangible and true stakeholder that has behaviors that can respond independently. And so as it relates to measurement, it makes sense to understand the impact that all of these different types of stakeholders or adjacent stakeholders can have on your brand or your organization or your service or your company. And so I believe that many are already measuring. And what they're doing is they're measuring in the context of what's important to their organization and the resources they have available to them. And then the question becomes, as relationships become more and more crucial to the work that you're doing and your organization, how open are you to explore additional ones to make sure you're prepared when you're looking around a corner of what can impact the relationship when you need it to either advance what you're doing or protect or preserve what you're doing.
So it's a lot. It's a lot to potentially measure, and including, some stakeholders that, like you said, are not human, which is a new frontier. You also talked about the risk environment and the role that plays in terms of relationships. So Vineet, I know that you work with a lot of companies that find themselves addressing some of these risks on a regular basis. What's your advice to them? Because it seems like it's increasingly volatile. Are relationships enough?
So is relationship enough? I think even if it is not enough, it is the most important ingredient. What does it do? It gives you, in a situation which is crisis, which is issues related, or tough times, gives you access, it gives you information, sometimes it gives you patience. And we work with a lot of manufacturing and large-scale mining, manufacturing, all of it. The first thing when we start working, and they are very crisis-prone, is look at the communities where they work with, the communities where they operate. Honestly, if you really look at, there's nothing works except the relationship with communities around. And you would see hundreds of case studies where such large manufacturing units and have never seen a word like strike or a shutdown or a blockade. Never. It's just because they understood one particular thing, which is relationship with the community around or the stakeholders around. So I think that's something. Now, when I look at other things, what are other important ingredients? I think data. Now, all of it, again, if you think deeper, is somewhere connected to information. Information is connected to relationship. Relationship is part of access. So it's you get only, you'll get access only when you have a relationship. So again, coming back, more and more you think about it, they will talk about it. They will sort of come back. The other kind of risks are this whole today's time. When we look at the consumerism, the brand. So I think there are two capitals. One is a discount capital, and second is a relationship capital. And the people who worked on discount capital have never built brands. They've never got it right. They always have to plus one to other brands as far as discounts are concerned. But the brands who have built relationships, the brand who have sort of focused on creating providing the value to the customer, have always been successful, and you see those brands around it. The third biggest risk, I believe, is in today's time is it's geopolitical, which is beyond all of it, right? But even in those cases, if you see, there are a lot of global companies who have survived and survived well, is because of their relationship with community, the government, and much more. And now to maintain that relationship, they must have used a lot of other sort of surrounding stuff, which is probably access to information, data, policy, research, what is required in the country, or even in some cases, a one-on-one relationship with the key stakeholders. So I think it's, again, bottom line is relationship.
Please go ahead.
Because every time Vineet speaks, I see sparkles in my brain. So I just wanted to add that we have to deal also with, most of the time, with critical stakeholders. We saw that leadership is based on relationship that are based on conversations. And so we should be prepared, if we run a business, to have tough conversations. Because you cannot go away from them, right? And so I think where the PR industry can help brands a lot is in this segment. And it's not only about storytelling at all. It's about understanding. It's about creating common understanding, not agreement, common understanding that might lead to solutions. And I think this is critical for any kind of business.
Yep, an important point. Uncomfortable truths is definitely part of this industry's responsibility. So I want to thank you all for your comments, and maybe to close, if I could ask each of you, what is the one lesson or takeaway from this discussion that you would like communicators or marketers to perhaps keep in mind? And Julia, maybe I'll start with you.
Yes, I'm connecting back to what Massimo said. It's I think what is important is that the relationship needs to get on eye level, and that brands are open to make themselves evaluate by more critical consumers, by more critical partners, and be very transparent about what they can help them with, and also be open to get in the discussion and argue about their arguments, and not just think they need to be trusted and because of big names or so. So they need to really take the consumer very seriously, and understand that they do have more power than they had in the past, and accept to be compared and to be also to be evaluated. Thank you.
Yeah, the relationships are changing. Over to you, Candace.
So I'll piggyback on what Julia said. As I was listening to the conversation, I was thinking about relationship capital, analogous with just capital in general, and what do you have in your bank account? And just like you sometimes have ways that you balance your bank account, whether you're using technology or memory or writing it down, taking stock of your relationship capital in much the same way. So when you're planning for something important, you're thinking about where that's going to go. Oftentimes we think about our relationship capital only through the lens of everything's positive, and we don't pressure test it. So if you think about buying a house, college, or a major purchase, you're thinking about in a fulsome way how much you have and how you can flex if something goes wrong. I would encourage brands and others to think about their relationship capital, not only when you're advancing what you're doing, but is it strong enough and fortified enough to resist those times when you really need to rely on that trust, and making sure that your behaviors, the behaviors of the messengers, all align, and you've created enough value and enough assets so that that relationship capital can persist and carry you through all phases of your organization's business cycle.
Oh, what can I say? My whole life, my whole profession is on relationship. And if I can tell you that if I have reached where I am today is because of relationships. There's no other word. Good times, relationships take you to a step higher. In tough times, relationship helps you to sail through. That's what I would really put it in very simple words. And so, yeah, it's all about relationships, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Vineet. I would add on top of what we said that, you can buy attention. It might be a quick win, but to get the right relationship in place, you should invest time. You should be critical about your own organization too, and you should plan for it properly. It's a mid-long-term run, but the benefits coming from relationships can highly reward any kind of organization.
Well, some great advice on which to close. I think what I'm hearing from all of you is be intentional, look at relationships as a long-term, holistic goal, and embrace the discomfort, because this isn't necessarily going to be easy. But thank you all, and I think we're all very happy. It's suddenly become a little bit cooler here. Thank you all very much, and it's my pleasure to moderate today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.